In a world full of diverse peoples and cultures, we are all united by our humanity. But what exactly makes us human? The ideology of what makes a living being human is widely debated upon. Are we just a mass of cells moving through space? Or are we distinct individuals with souls and meaning? If we really are just a mass of cells, when do we graduate from cell to human life? Or should that cell already be considered a human? Questions like these have been asked, but there will never be a definitive answer, and this dilemma is the underlying rationale for the debate over the morality of abortion. Throughout this speech, I will argue why abortion is morally permissible in some situations and reinforcing my point using the expertise of philosopher Mary Ann Warren. Don Marquis published an article on why abortion is immoral in the Journal of Philosophy. It goes into detail into why abortion is seriously wrong, except for in very rare cases. Marquis believes that abortion is no different than killing an innocent human adult in the majority of cases. There are partisan viewpoints concerning abortion, which leaves very little room for middle ground. People's beliefs are typically classified into either the pro-choice or pro-life perspective. Marquis's article leans more towards the pro-life perspective. He does, however, admit that it might not make complete sense to give full moral rights to a being lacking psychological personhood. Mary Ann Warren further explains the idea of personhood, and I will be using her article as support in my persuasive section of this argumentative speech. It has been established that it is wrong to kill human beings for a multitude of reasons, such as brutalization, but the greatest loss is of a life. Losing a life affects one's friends and family, yes, but it also is depriving this entity of a future, one of the biggest losses an individual can face. The main focus should be placed into understanding what makes the act of killing so wrong and directing that knowledge towards the debate of abortion to determine whether or not it truly is immoral. It is considered wrong to kill an embryo as this being lacks sentience. Sentience is the capacity to be aware of feelings and other sensations. So, in the situation of an abortion, an embryo is considered to be a victim. Marquis brings up the example of plants and the idea that even though they're technically alive, they do lack a consciousness and cannot be classified as a victim. Although an embryo lacks a sentience, they have the potential to gain one in the future, which makes killing them immoral. Marquis does bring up some valid points in his argument, but I do not think it makes denying women the right to a safe and affordable access to abortions. Philosopher Mary Ann Warren is able to deny some of the premises that Marquis made throughout her piece on the moral and legal status of abortion. Her main argument for the pro-choice side is that an embryo or fetus is not fully a part of the moral community. To understand her stance, it's important to evaluate what factors are involved in classifying an entity into the category of a moral community. Warren has developed 5 traits of personhood that are used to differentiate an entity from a person. The first trait is consciousness. This is defined as the ability of an individual to understand their surroundings and to feel pain. The second trait, reasoning, is the ability of an individual to solve problems. Third is self-motivated activity. This refers to an individual's ability to think and make decisions for themselves without the influence of other outside forces. Fourth is the capacity to communicate. According to Warren, communication entails one's ability to express their internal ideas through external means. Warren's last trait is the mental capability of an individual to comprehend self-awareness and self-concepts. Warren emphasized, however, that it is not necessary for an entity to possess all 5 traits, and that the presence of just some may be sufficient in classifying an entity as a person. When using the ideas of personhood and evaluating the differences between an entity and a person, it is also important to consider both genetic and moral sense. The genetic sense relies on DNA and claims that only members of the species Homo sapiens are considered humans. The moral sense classifies humans as human beings if they are a full-fledged member of the moral community, according to Warren. In the genetic sense, fetuses are not considered to be humans, but they are in the moral sense. Marquise may attempt to argue the faults in Warren's article, specifically her idea of infanticide. Warren argues that in specific situations, infanticide may be considered acceptable and morally permissible. There are a few differences between a fetus and an infant, which makes the case for why infanticide may be permissible in extreme cases. In the scenario that an infant is born with severe medical conditions, with no hope of getting better, infanticide may be an option. In this type of situation, medical treatment would only cause suffering to the newborn and become an overwhelming financial burden on the family, which obviously we do not want. Warren agrees that deliberately killing a viable newborn is unjustifiable, as our society has created publicly funded opportunities that will provide childcare to parents and guardians that do not wish to do so. Our article finds it immoral to wrongfully kill a human being, but deems it possibly permissible in specific situations, such as the case of withholding treatment to a patient. Marquise would likely argue that killing an infant is extremely unjust and immoral, as he already believes that his fetus has the same moral rights as an adult human being. He would also find it wrong that an infant is denied the right to life, as the decision to have its life terminated is made for them without their consent. I do not think that Marquise would find infanticide acceptable in any situation, even the one I have described above. He believes that killing is wrong no matter what the situation may be, and that taking away the life of a fetus or infant may even be considered worse than an adult human, as they have no way of giving consent and are denied the right to a future. I am going to conclude this speech by saying that I urge you to write to your state legislators to not let them take away women's rights to safe and affordable abortions. Women deserve this right, and they should have the legal means to do so if they deem this necessary. Another option to help women and abortions would be to donating to Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood is a wonderful foundation that has been used for women and does not deny anyone the right to their health care. If the case arises where an individual has made the decision that they would like to have an abortion, places like Planned Parenthood would be made available to them through this process. If you personally believe that abortions are wrong, then do not have one. But a person that believes that abortion would be the best decision for them and their future should not be denied or turned down this because of the opinions of others.